A city rising from the desert sands, a beacon of sustainability and equity in a world grappling with climate change and social inequality. A place where cutting-edge technology meets community-focused design, where the very ground beneath your feet works to fund public services and uplift its residents. This is the vision of Telosa, a $400 billion planned city that aims to redefine urban living in the American West. But as we zoom in on this grand vision, cracks begin to appear in its pristine facade. The road from utopian dream to concrete reality is fraught with challenges, and Telosa's journey may lead not to a thriving metropolis, but to one of the most expensive abandoned projects in US history. Let's dive into the ambitious plans for Telosa and explore why this desert megacity might be destined to become a modern-day ghost town before it even gets off the ground. But first, don't forget to show your support by giving this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Together, we can continue creating amazing content. Let's start with the basics. Telosa is the brainchild of Mark Lohr, a serial entrepreneur who made his fortune in e-commerce. After selling his company Jet.com to Walmart for $3.3 billion, Lohr set his sights on an even bigger challenge: reinventing the modern city. The name Telosa comes from the ancient Greek word telos, meaning highest purpose. And this city does have some lofty goals. Lohr envisions a metropolis of 5 million people in 150,000 acres, built from the ground up on the principles of sustainability, equity, and cutting-edge technology. The first announcement was made in 2021. The visionary Lohr dropped some incredible digital renderings created by the brilliant minds at Bjarke Ingels Group, or BIG, the architect geniuses hired to turn Lohr's utopian dream into a living, breathing reality. These images are straight out of a sustainable paradise, lush, green residential buildings where people can frolic amidst wide-open spaces. And with fossil fuel guzzling cars banned, the sun-drenched streets are filled with autonomous vehicles zipping alongside scooters and happy pedestrians. One of the renderings also showcases the Equitism Tower. This soaring skyscraper is dubbed a beacon for the city, and for good reason. It's got elevated water storage, high-tech aeroponic farms, and an energy-producing photovoltaic roof that allows it to share and distribute all its eco-friendly goodness. And here's where things get really interesting. Telosa isn't just supposed to be an eco-friendly smart city. It's built on a radical economic concept that Lohr calls equitism. Wait, what's equitism? I'm glad you asked. Equitism is Lohr's attempt to blend capitalism with a more equitable distribution of wealth. The basic idea is this: all the land in Telosa would be owned by a community endowment. As the city grows and land values increase, that wealth would be funneled back into public services like education, healthcare, and affordable housing. Lohr argues that if you applied this model to a place like Manhattan, it would generate over $60 billion annually for public investment. That's more than double what New York City currently spends on infrastructure and social programs. It sounds great in theory, right? A way to harness the power of capitalism while ensuring everyone benefits. But here's the thing: Lohr wants to build Telosa from scratch, in one of the most challenging environments imaginable. The exact site for Telosa hasn't been chosen yet, but the shortlist includes areas in Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, and Texas. In other words, some of the most arid regions in the United States. Vast stretches of sun-baked earth, sparse vegetation, and a whole lot of nothing as far as the eye can see. It's beautiful in its own way, but it's also an incredibly hostile environment for human habitation. And this brings us to our first major challenge: water. The American West is already in the grips of a mega drought. Major cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas are scrambling to secure their water futures. So how does Telosa plan to provide water for millions of residents in an even more remote and arid location? The city's website talks about a sophisticated system to store, clean, and reuse fresh water on site. But details are scarce, and experts are skeptical. Ellen Dunham Jones, an urban design professor at Georgia Tech University, put it bluntly: the idea of supporting 1 million people on worthless land is a tough hill to climb. And it's not just about having enough water to drink. Think about all the other ways a city uses water: sanitation, industry, agriculture, landscaping. The list goes on. In a desert environment, every drop is precious, and the cost of securing and managing water resources could be astronomical. But if we're already worried about the water situation, just wait until you hear what's coming. Dust storms are a fact of life in desert regions. We're talking about massive walls of sand and particulate matter that can blot out the sun and choke the air for days on end. These storms pose serious health risks, especially for people with respiratory conditions. They can also wreak havoc on infrastructure, clogging machinery and eroding buildings. How will Telosa protect its residents and its fancy high-tech systems from this constant onslaught of dust? And then there's the climate. Deserts are known for extreme temperature swings. Summers are brutally hot, with temperatures regularly soaring above 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius. Winters can be surprisingly cold, especially at night. This harsh climate puts enormous strain on energy systems. Cooling buildings in summer and heating them in winter requires massive amounts of power. Telosa's plans call for 100% renewable energy, which is admirable. But the sheer scale of energy needed to keep millions of people comfortable in this environment is staggering. All of these environmental factors add up to a simple truth. Building a city for millions of people in the desert is going to be incredibly expensive. And this brings us to our next major hurdle: money. Telosa's estimated price tag is $400 billion. To put that in perspective, it's more than the GDP of many countries. It's nearly half the cost of the entire Apollo space program, adjusted for inflation. But wait, because that $400 billion is probably a lowball estimate. Major infrastructure projects are notorious for cost overruns. The California high-speed rail project, for instance, has seen its budget balloon from $35 billion to over $100 billion. In Telosa's case, the unique challenges of its desert location could lead to exponential cost increases. Every aspect of the city's infrastructure would need to be engineered to withstand extreme conditions. The cost of materials and labor would likely be higher due to the remote location. Then there's the question of funding. Lore plans to finance the initial $25 billion phase through a combination of private investors, philanthropists, and potentially government grants. But securing long-term funding for a project of this scale and risk is another matter entirely. Investors might be intrigued by the potential returns of a successful city, but they'll also be wary of the enormous upfront costs and uncertain timeline. And let's not forget, Telosa's whole economic model is based on an untested concept of equitism. That's a tough sell in the cutthroat world of high finance. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that Telosa overcomes its environmental and financial hurdles. There's still one crucial question we need to ask. Will people actually want to live there? Building a city is one thing. Populating it is another challenge entirely. Lore envisions Telosa growing to 5 million residents, with the first 50,000 moving in by 2030. But attracting people to a brand new city in the middle of the desert is no easy feat. Think about why people move to cities. Jobs are usually the primary driver. But creating a diverse, sustainable job market from scratch is an enormous challenge. Lore plans to use a venture capital fund to invest in startups that relocate to Telosa. But this strategy has its limits. Tech startups alone cannot sustain a city of millions. Telosa would need to attract a wide range of industries and businesses, all while competing with established urban centers that offer proven infrastructure, talent pools, and quality of life. And let's not forget, many of the industries that might be attracted to a remote location, like manufacturing or resource extraction, don't exactly align with Telosa's eco-friendly high-tech image. Also, the idea of equitism might appeal to some, but others may be wary of a system that limits individual property rights and wealth accumulation through real estate. After all, for many Americans, owning a home is a key part of building personal wealth. All of these factors make Telosa's population goals seem highly optimistic, if not outright unrealistic. And without a critical mass of residents, the city's grand plans for sustainability and equity become moot. This brings us to a sobering possibility. Telosa could become one of the biggest abandoned projects in US history. The world is littered with examples of ambitious urban projects that failed to live up to their promise. China's ghost cities, built to house millions but standing largely empty, serve as a perfect example. Closer to home, the fate of California City, a planned community in the Mojave Desert that never took off, offers a stark reminder of the risks of desert urban development. If Telosa fails to overcome its numerous challenges, it could face a similar fate, and the consequences would go far beyond wasted money and resources. That $400 billion or more could have been used to address pressing urban issues in existing cities. It could have funded affordable housing initiatives, improved public transit systems, or accelerated the transition to renewable energy in communities across the country. So what's the big deal with building entire cities from the ground up? Well, it's become quite the ambitious trend, especially in places like Saudi Arabia with their mind-blowing NEOM project. See, Saudi Arabia is determined to wean itself off that sweet, sweet oil money. And what better way to diversify than by constructing a mind-bogglingly futuristic megacity in the desert? Maybe it's the fact that a blank slate allows urban pioneers to build the city of the future unconstrained by existing infrastructure. They can integrate cutting-edge technologies, sustainable practices, and modern urban planning principles from the get-go. But the mind-boggling costs and the uncertainty over if anyone will actually want to live in them initially may destroy the dream. Regardless of which side you fall on, there's no denying the audacious scale and futuristic visions behind these greenfield city projects. They represent the latest foray into how the urban domains of tomorrow could take shape. As for Telosa itself, its future remains uncertain. Will it overcome its numerous challenges and emerge as a shining example of 21st century urbanism, or will it join the ranks of abandoned megaprojects? A cautionary tale for future generations. Who knows? Maybe someday we'll look back on Telosa as the catalyst that sparked a new era of urban development. An era where we combine ambitious vision with practical implementation, where we work with nature instead of against it, and where we put people at the center of our city building efforts. Until then, keep an eye on Visionary, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when it's all set. Until next time.